Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my reflection of 2021. This is my way of looking back at the various things that have happened both to me and in the world of 2021, and really they're meant as a jumping off point so that way you can kind of look back and reflect upon your year and how it's been going and things like that. So that way you can really, put an end to 2021 and start considering 2022 in terms of your goals that you want to accomplish, right? Resolutions, things of that nature. So that's what this intention is supposed to be, to give you sort of viewpoints of, looking back and considering various things. Now, before I fully get into it, in terms of the year at large, I want to sort of, this is a nice jumping off point, but this past week and a half, I've been creatively working to sync up footage that we filmed for my second feature film that we had filmed in Colombia. And simultaneously, we had just over this past weekend shot an important scene that we didn't film in Colombia, right? We've shot about 95% of the entirety of what we needed to in Colombia. And now the rest of it, we're finishing out here in LA. And so we actually got one of those things done this past weekend. And, as far as the shoot went, it was great. We wrapped out 3 out of the 5 actors. And it was a nice mini reunion, right? Everyone was on such a high post-Columbia, and there was so much emotion of we just spent basically 2 weeks together, and now the band's breaking apart, so to speak, at least for a little while. And so to kind of have that energy of hey, how's it been going for the past couple of weeks? It was just great to see, everyone's energy, and it really worked for the scene as well. So that was exciting. And likewise, now we're planning the next stage of it, right? So I'm looking at other locations. We're going to pretty good chance that we're going to do it mid-January. And yeah, it'll be exciting to finally wrap out the film, from a production standpoint. But by focusing on that, it's kind of slowed down the syncing process, which slows down my ability to edit. And that's okay. I think there's a lesson there that things just generally from a creative standpoint take longer than you expect, especially when you're doing it on a more micro budget level, more on an indie level, because there's also life that happens around you. But nonetheless, if you just keep working at it, things do build. And, I'm going to talk about the various accomplishments of my year and things of that nature. And what's really crazy, look back on it, is we sometimes overestimate what we can do in a day, a week, maybe sometimes a year. But looking back at this year, I'm really proud of all the things I did manage to accomplish, and that's because of the philosophy of no hurry, no pause. You just keep going at it. And sometimes, I'll admit there's that frustration on a day-to-day, week-to-week level where you're oh, am I getting enough done type of thing. But when you really look back at it, when you kind of just make progress, however incrementally, it does lead to results, and part of it is too, a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about that happened for me this year is the culmination of years of work, right? So that's another big lesson. It doesn't just happen overnight. It happens based on, your training from other years, your experiences from other years, and just, taking time. So, know that kind of going into it. And there's a number of ways to really look back at this, right? I think for me, there's so much stuff happening in the world constantly, especially, COVID's not fully in the rear view mirror like many of us would have imagined it to be, hoped it to be, and things of that nature. Certainly, if you turn on the news, there's constantly things you're bombarded with, right? The economy is not where we want it to be. Social inequity still exists. The horrors of, even when I look back at it, it hasn't even been a year since the January 6th insurrection, things of that nature. So, you kind of look at that, and when you just focus on that, it can be very defeatist, right? But part of what I've always looked at, and is an undercurrent of the things I teach, is that regardless of what's happening in the world, you have a power to affect it in whatever way, right? And so even if you don't make a conscious effort, you're affecting the world in one way, shape, or form. And so in that regard, wouldn't you want to affect it in the way that's true to you, right? Rather than unconsciously. David Foster Wallace, in his very famous "This Is Water" speech, he talks about our natural default setting. And when we don't think about things, our natural default setting kicks in, which is, selfish, because quite literally everything in our own world supports this deep inherent belief that we are the absolute center of the universe, right? Because you've never lived someone else's experience. You're told about them, they have to be communicated to you, but you've never lived it, right? And so we have to make that conscious effort to get beyond ourselves. As the term is not an accident of being well-adjusted, right? And so, in spite of everything, I try to approach, what power do I have within this? And part of that is focusing on things I can be grateful for, right? When you do that, you take back power and autonomy within your own life. And it's not to say that that your life isn't problem-free, and you should never compare ultimately, your plight to somebody else's, because that's a dangerous road to go down on. Instead, I think we can have empathy for one another, right? But really, I think you have to hold the space for both things, not just the good and not just the bad, but if anything, when you look at the bad, it allows you to have more gratitude for the things that you do have, and it's quite interesting. Like, this past year has been the quickest and has also been the longest, right? It's very interesting, and a fun exercise for you could be to go month by month and figure out the headspace you were in and figure out what you were doing. And it's when you do that, it is very interesting to, as I said, note all the things that have actually happened for you this year. I'm sure there are lots that you're unaware of, and that includes both large and small. I look back at this past year and the fact that I was able to have just brunch with my friends a number of times. That was awesome. That normalcy of just hanging out with friends, and it's not like we did it every weekend, but once every month or 2 months, whatever it may have been, just to get together and shoot the shit like nothing ever happened between us, right? We just picked up where we left off. That was amazing. I got to take my friends to Solvang, which is basically like a wine town, and we did that. That was fun. So yeah, I look back at all the fun things I was able to do, and I would encourage you to do the same. And especially in many ways, for me, I was forced to kind of approach things differently, right? And part of, for me, what I looked at was, okay, what are some new experiences that are available to me? And this year I played paintball for the very first time because there was an opportunity that came up through a friend's birthday celebration. I was like, yeah, let's do it. One of my other friends really loves escape rooms, and he was here in LA from Chicago, I was like, all right, let's do it. And, we literally did 3 escape rooms all within the span of a week, and that was a lot of fun. So, yeah, I got to see my friends perform comedy at Flappers. Flappers is this comedy venue in Burbank, California, one that I've walked by hundreds of times, quite literally, but never been inside. And so to see, a number of my friends perform all on the same night, that was a great experience. I had a blast with that. So, I would encourage you to look at all the fun things you have gotten to do. I'm sure it's different than perhaps other years, but nonetheless, I'm sure there are exciting things that you have been able to partake. The other thing I look back at is like blessings. What are some things, that came out of this past year that were unexpected? And even if you can see how you can connect the dots of how things led to that, still the fact that they're part of your life is amazing. So for example, for me, this year I had wanted to do a pitch deck, and really elevate it in terms of its look and feel. And through a friend, I got to know this really incredible graphic designer that I want to work with. Over the years, it's been incredible to meet like-minded people and elevate those that I surround myself with, that I can turn to for various things. And it's been incredible, when you look at a lot of filmmakers, they work with, a collective group of people from one project to another. And it's because A, you get to create shorthand, but B, when you really find somebody that you like working with, why not, right? And when you jive and so forth, it's amazing. Speaking of those people, Edgar Cortez, who is my sound designer for a number of projects, I'd never actually met him in person. We've known each other for a number of years now, and he's worked on a lot of my projects. He's now worked on a lot of my friends' projects, but we'd never met. And through me filming my second feature film in Colombia, where he's from, I got to meet him in real life, and that was incredible. I learned how to do visual effects, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that with a specific project, but that's been amazing, And one of the biggest blessings of this year was, my dog, Chloe, she had a pinched nerve in about July, and, there was a time where I thought this would just be part of her life, she would be more inactive and things of that nature, but she's recovered, for the most part, it seems like, I still take precautions and things of that nature, but for the most part, she's as playful as she ever was, and that's incredible to see. I didn't think that would happen, so I'm truly grateful for that. That's a big, big blessing, right? I'm grateful for all the things I've been a part of. I got to, for the third year in a row, work with the Grammys. I did a project with Alzheimer's LA, which is an incredible organization, and I love projects where there's a lot of meaning behind it, right? Where I can use my talents to add something to the world, and certainly working with Alzheimer's LA is a part of that. I got to work on various people's, reels, so particularly hosting reels, and that's been great. Because I just, editing to me is like second nature. And so when I can help out somebody that I know, put themselves out into the world, it's always a great feeling, right? And then also personally, it's been great. One of my friends filmed his first feature film, one that he's been working on for a number of years, in terms of the writing phase. And finally, they went into pre-production and production, and now they're toward the tail end of post-production, and seeing that process and having a hand at giving him my experiences of how my first feature film went, so that way he had the benefit of those stories, that experience. it's been really wonderful to see, and I think he's got something really special there, and he's been really working to continue to make it special. He's not vain in his efforts, and that's awesome, because some people they can kind of just call it quits after a certain point and be like, all right, that's it, it is what it is. And it's like, no, he continues to shape and sculpt it into and elevate it ultimately. So it's been fun to be a part of. Recently one, from the creative standpoint, when I look back on it, it's amazing all the things that, have really come to fruition this year. And as I said, a lot of them are because of legwork from years prior. So this is not just, this year specifically. So please take that into account. One such thing being, recently I published my debut novel, Elan Elan, which is a coming-of-age story set in Slovakia. And, I've been working on that for like 6 years, quite honestly, right? And so to have it out there finally is really incredible, And I remember it was, we'd been doing so much in terms of the writing, but I remember like even early on, I had commissioned to have a book cover designed. And when finally I felt ready to publish this, it was great that from years ago, I already had like this great cover image for the book ready to go, So just doing the legwork, and I think people don't really understand the value of setting yourself up, right? In the moment, we can be lazy or stuff like that, or think it's not important to, do X, Y, and Z. But really, it comes back to bite you in the ass, right? There's a quote, and I forget, who said it to me in my life, but like, lazy people work the hardest. And it's kind of true, when you don't put in the legwork, you have to work. And it's not that it's impossible, right? It's not like if I didn't have a book cover commissioned, years ago, that I wouldn't have gotten done. But something within me at the time told me like, hey, I have an opportunity here. I have the time. I know what I want the cover to be. So let's just make it, and then it both inspired me because I saw it and it propelled me to keep revising the book and so forth. And it was at a time when someone was like beta reading the story, so it's not like I could do anything really on the writing itself. I was like, okay, how? I think that's the thing you have to ask yourself in terms of creative projects is, how can I keep something going, even if I need to step away from it or there's nothing I can do in this particular moment, right? And that was, a way for me to continue the project, was to say like, okay, I have beta readers going over it and going to tell me what needs to be essentially fixed, right? That's the underlying current of why you have a beta reader. But in the meantime, I know that's going to take a couple of weeks, so let me at least work on this. And yeah, that I'm so grateful that I did that. And speaking of which, on my Patreon page, I put out photos of real life locations that inspired the book. I thought that would be a nice little reward to the people that support me on Patreon, right? The book tries to capture the places I spent my summers in, but at the end of the day, a picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say. And so I figured it'd be a nice little award to the people that support me through Patreon. So if you're curious, check that out there. So that was a big thing. I revised and submitted my feature script, In Search of Sunrise, to various festivals. And though I didn't win anything in terms of the screenwriting competitions, in the various festivals that I did submit to, including like the Austin Film Festival, they got pretty far. They got into like the quarterfinals. And, when you have, like 5,000, 6,000 submissions for these various competitions, that's pretty far. And so I'm very grateful for that. And, a lot of times when you get that far in, you receive notes back from the readers, and that's been beneficial because I look forward to taking their feedback and applying it to that script, and as part of that, kind of tying back to this graphic designer that I met, I wanted to create a pitch deck for In Search of Sunrise, and so I'm grateful I really learned how to do a film pitch deck. I've done decks for other things, and that was a stepping stone towards a film pitch deck, but now I learned specifically what goes into a pitch deck and whatnot, and as part of that, I always knew that I wanted like a whole package thing. So like a pitch deck, I wanted the script to be done, but I also wanted a proof of concept because this was like very visual and kind of unique in a lot of ways. And so I wanted to showcase that to people. And so, we had set out in January to film this proof of concept, this like 3-minute proof of concept. And, I'm so glad I did that because I remember, one of the themes of this year was people sort of saying like, well, why are you rushing it? Why don't you just do it instead of January, do it in February or March? And I was like, well, what's the difference ultimately? Their fear was COVID and things like that. And I'm not saying be brazen about it, but, and it might seem counterintuitive to what I've been talking about, patience. But for me, it's like, we've done the legwork, and it's not like it was being rushed. And, the risk in my mind existed one way or the other, and our approach to it was going to be as safe as possible. So I literally filmed each person basically separate of each other. So it was me and an actor, and that was against the green screen, right? And then we compiled it all together to put them in the scene as if they're all interacting together. And I'm so glad I did that because it took like 2.5 months to really complete the visual effects on that. And, that really taught me, that was my first time really working with visual effects. I mean, as I said, everything was filmed against a green screen, so we had to create the environment and, everything had to be placed in there. And I'm so glad I went through that experience because it taught me a lot, and I'm really proud of that proof of concept, that short film. It really does something quite unique, and it taught me a lot. And so even if it was a failure, to me, it was a success because of everything that I had learned. And I think, excuse me, one has to really look at, how do I create, like, even if something doesn't succeed, how do I get something still out of it? And that's the way I approach a lot of things, even like tying to my my second feature film that we filmed in Colombia. It was like worst case scenario, I'll get a vacation out of it with my friends, right, in Colombia. So so that was going to be like the ultimate fail-safe tactic. But obviously we managed to do something really incredible. And this year I also launched a crowdfund campaign. And that was something really special because I always wanted to do a crowdfund and see how that went. And though I didn't get the quantity of donors, the quality was just incredible, to have put myself out there in that way. You're really banking on people appreciating what you create. And essentially I think a lot of people make the mistake that a crowdfund will just be random people, and it can be, right? But really the core of it starts with friends and family. And to know that I have that kind of support from friends and family means a lot. And, as the Spider-Man quote goes, with great power comes great responsibility. And so it's not like I tap into them for everything. And I think that's a mistake some artists make, is that they just over inundate people constantly. It's like, okay, I can't keep doing that, But in this way, people really stepped up because I'd been holding off on this sort of ask beforehand, because I had plenty of people ask me with my first feature film of like, why didn't you crowdfund that? And I was like, I don't want people taking a risk on me without having at least, I want people, like on this one, I felt good about it because it's like they can look to my first feature film to see, whether or not they like it, like my style, and they know that I can complete a feature film versus like with the first one, it's like, okay, maybe it might work, maybe it might not. So I didn't want to put that sort of pressure on myself and on people really. So, so a lot of lessons learned through that, and it's been great. To that effect, speaking of films, my first feature film, Love Market, finally came out this year. It's available on Amazon. It's going to be available on more platforms in the coming months. But it's been, it's been great to finally get that out there. I mean, we finished it before the pandemic hit in 2020, and it had been doing various film festivals throughout 2020, but and winning various ones. But it's always like you just get this email of like, you won a film festival. So, you don't get the interaction directly with the audience. And finally, now that it's out there in this way, seeing some of the reviews and things like that, it's been fun. I'm not gonna lie, and it's just great that it's out there. I think once you complete something, that you just want it out there, and because it's like a child, and it's now it's its own thing. I've done everything that I can, and it's out there on its own, and nothing else I can do for it. But to be proud of it. Speaking of being proud of something, I almost had forgotten, but like in January, I was helping a friend edit his first short film. And, it was his like first time really writing and directing, and, because he's an actor, he put himself in the movie as well. And I just love people with that sort of spirit of just going for it, right? That's why I decided, I was like, all right, sight unseen, I'll help you edit the movie. And, now finally he's getting to the point where he's going to release it, right? And that's exciting to see, those months of work that went into it in terms of the editing, the color correction, the music, the work that they put into it in terms of the acting. There was such goodwill around the movie from start to finish, and so I'm really excited that he's gonna be putting it out there. And when it's officially out, I'll talk about it and link to it so that way you guys can see it. But really awesome. As the other thing this year, I really wanted to go back and revisit my nonfiction book, Master Mental Fortitude, and update it based on the past couple of years and so forth, because I released it in 2019. And so I really focused on that. I had wanted to basically complete revisions on it by March. That didn't happen till November. And so I submitted those, and now person I work with, they're kind of updating the images and so forth, because I just basically did the text, and they have to format in the proper way. So it's not the update's not available currently, but I'm looking forward to that. At least my end of it is done, and so probably in early 2022, that will be an accomplishment that I'll have fully completed. And then just this filming my second feature film. What a journey that's been of pre-production with doing rehearsals here and figuring out how we're going to film in Colombia, and this notion that come November, COVID might be a little bit more contained because of the vaccine and stuff like that. And to a degree it was, right? I mean, a lot more things were opened up and so forth, but certainly COVID wasn't in the rearview mirror as we'd all hoped, but yet we made that part of the movie in a natural way. It's not a COVID movie, but it doesn't shy away from COVID being a part of the world. And I really think we did something special all around. In terms of the acting, the performances on screen, the places we got, the crew that we had. And I look forward to finishing production out and getting it out there. I think, my first film was so specific in terms of what it was going to be. Now there's ways to play with it, just even from an editing standpoint of, do you play something on a wide shot versus a close-up, and what does that say about the character and so forth. So I think this one's going to take a little bit longer than my first one, but it's exciting because it's not a negative, it's a positive. There's more play there, and so I look forward to that. So those are kind of the overall sweeping things in terms of this year. But as I said, these things that I'm building took years to get to. I'd been essentially working within film and TV since I was 15, back when I was doing documentary work for the first hospice in America. And so, I think we all have to see our creative lives as a journey, and enjoy it along the way, rather than beat ourselves up over what we didn't do or could have done, right? I know a lot of my friends that took essentially a break this year, not necessarily even consciously, but just didn't put out content, right? Excuse me. And I look at that as a negative, because it's like, sometimes you need that rest and reflection. If you read Silence is the Key, Stillness is the Key, by Ryan Holiday, in it he highlights Winston Churchill, who basically was painting and laying down brick for 10 years, and his career was thought of as over in politics. And then World War II is at its height, and he gets called in to essentially save the country. And many people, you can look at those 10 years of him painting and so forth as the key of why he was the best man for the job. And so, we can never really judge, what something brings to our lives or doesn't. And, it's only through the benefit of hindsight that we see those connective dots. And also, again, it goes to the idea of like getting beyond our natural default setting, because it's not to say that each and every experience in our lives has this mystical aspect to it, but it could if that's what you prescribe it to, right? So, I think if anything, 2021 has taught me to have this perspective, and to understand that while I can't solve the world's problems, I do have a role to play. And, optimism is not the same as positivity. Optimism sees the horrors of the world, but believes there's a brighter future, versus, positivity in many ways just dismisses those things. And I'm not about that. I will specifically talk about like the best lessons, the top 10 lessons, if you will, that I've learned in 2021 in a different video. But this is just more of a reflection and things of that nature. And as I said, this isn't supposed to be me touting my accomplishments. It's more about giving you a viewpoint into how to do a reflection for your own self. So yeah, whether that's through journaling, meditation, talking about it with somebody over brunch or dinner, I think it's important to really look back at the year and figure out, what you want to keep, what you don't, so that way you can have a better sense of what you want for 2022, right? But never beat yourself up, right? The only reason we should go into the past is to learn lessons, never to beat ourselves up. So that's my message to you. Thank you for taking the time to tune in and join me, and have been part of my journey in the way that you have. I really appreciate you. If you want to support me, you can of course just subscribe, and that way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. You can join my Patreon page, where we can have more direct interactions. or just support my art. Check out my first movie, Love Market. Get my debut novel, Elan Elan, or buy the nonfiction book, Master Mental Fortitude. If you want to wait for the revision to come out, that's totally fine. I'll obviously keep you updated, but all the links are down below in the description box, so that way you can click through a lot easier. Anyway, thank you so much. Happy holidays. I'll see you next time.